What up? What up? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Hope you've been taking some solid action this past week. I hope you've been committing towards your goals, a commitment to success, to that future version of yourself that you are stepping into, my friend, every single week. And also that you're really taking action when it comes to this project. Those are all of my hopes for you. And today on the podcast episode, I think this is kind of an inspirational episode because anytime I have someone on the podcast who is not necessarily a business person, it always fills me with glee, right? Because I think a lot of the times we're artists, we're creators, we're innovators, we're people that are trying to bring out a new product or a new software tool or something into the world. And more often than not, that's what we're passionate about. But when it comes to the business side, we're not always that excited about pursuing that. And I totally relate with that, man. Especially when it comes to the finance industry and all the fancy jargon and terms and talking about what's the difference between, discount and cash flow and, understanding things when it comes to the P&L and balance sheets and, regulations and all that not so fun stuff that kind of stifles creativity and innovation in some ways. I never liked that kind of stuff. And especially when people start to use big fancy words that don't make any sense and that just kind of obfuscate actually what someone is trying to do or trying to tell you. To me, it's always a barrier of entry to entering a certain industry. So today, we're talking about Reg CF, again, regulation crowdfunding. And for those that are not familiar, this is basically a way similar to Kickstarter and Indiegogo that you can raise money from the crowd. However, with one important distinction, one big difference. And that is the people that are actually backing or supporting you, they're not pre-ordering your product, they're becoming an investor in your company. They're really becoming an investor in your startup company. And in that way, they're becoming an evangelist. They're giving you their hard-earned cash, right? They're actually financially committing to your vision. And they're also kind of joining their own little community. So this is something that's been really just been blowing up, right? In the last couple of months and particularly the last year, I would say, particularly as the rates at which you can raise money have raised from $1,070,000 to $5 million. This has been a huge change. It's something that has enabled a lot more people to get involved with regulation crowdfunding. So in today's episode, we actually interviewed an entrepreneur who raised over $100K, $108,724 to be exact, for a game changer in green technology. So for those out there that have a physical product or a technology gadget or gizmo, you're considering doing something like raising money, this can be a great way to involve the crowd in that opportunity. So they were able to do a 6-figure WeFunder campaign, and they kind of came on the podcast to share that story of how this individual was an architect. He wasn't necessarily a business guy, but he was able to have a 6-figure campaign using crowdfunding and the way he was able to do that. So you're going to hear a little bit about that in today's episode and the story behind that. But what's more, I think that this is a stellar example of how you don't necessarily have to be a brainiac when it comes to finance or when it comes to business to run a Reg CF, regulation crowdfunding style campaign. In addition, it is not rocket science. It is a little bit intimidating the first time you consider something like this, especially when all these big words and jargon are kind of thrown your way. However, it's the same as any other kind of goal. And our podcast, my podcast, right? My blog, crowdcrux.com, my YouTube channel, Salvador Briggman, all these things are designed to make it just a tiny bit less scary. Because more often than not, you think about the things you want in life. You think about the things that could really enhance your life, right? And make it just a beautiful quality of that future goal, of that destiny that you're trying to reach towards, you're trying to go towards. More often than not, the things that are holding you back are fears. That fear that it's not going to work out, a fear that's overly complicated, that fear that you can't figure it out. And I've also experienced that in my own life. So with all of my content, I'm trying to teach, I'm trying to share with you things that work, specifically in today's episode, things that work to get funding. But kind of as a hidden message, if you will. The other thing I'm trying to do is deliver to you that kind of that confidence that this is something that you can do and that you don't have to be an expert in order to pull one of these things off. So I think you're going to like today's episode. If you want to learn more about equity crowdfunding, you can join my newsletter. You can go to crowdcrux.com/newsletter. That link is crowdcrux.com/newsletter. And you'll start getting some emails from me there when I send out my weekly newsletter with killer crowdfunding tips from Sal. But in addition, at the end of this episode, if you're interested in exploring this for your startup, for your company, for you, for your technology, I'm going to share a way that you can work with me or you just get some of my thoughts on what it is that you're doing. And we'll get into that at the end of the episode. That being said, let's dive in. Let's learn how this individual, this entrepreneur, this architect, this innovation game changer was able to raise over 6 figures with their WeFunder campaign. And it's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. Fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have a 6-figure WeFunder campaign in the house for a game changer in green technology. This founder and this founding team is literally changing the world, and we are lucky enough to be able to talk to them today on the podcast. We have Rajiv here on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Sal. Great meeting you.
Definitely. Do you think we can get started? Maybe you can tell the listeners a bit about this problem that you are working to solve with your company and really what made you passionate about solving that problem.
Well, global warming is something which is a huge challenge today. It's been a challenge for many years, and most folks either are naysayers or simply sort of ignore the problem. But the fact is that we are way beyond the tipping point, and unless we do something drastic, our children are not going to inherit a planet that's going to be livable. So, addressing this problem, solar is definitely a part of the solution, but current solar solutions are very limited. They are restricted to the solar panel, which is an ugly, heavy technological appendage which has to be supported and mounted on the roof. And so that's why we thought we'd work on something which is transformative, that lives amongst us, and that is able to exist within our towns, neighborhoods, and cities.
And I understand you've been working on a lot of different complex projects in the years past. How did you kind of get your start here in entrepreneurship and starting your own company?
That's an interesting question. I've been an architect for 30 years, and I've been involved with designing sustainable buildings. And as a part of our design, we used a number of different environmental sustainable technologies, including solar. And as we went along over the years, I found ourselves being very limited by the solar panel. We designed interesting roofs, and then we designed more interesting roofs, and then we extended the roofs to become larger to take more panels. But it was very limiting, and I became very frustrated. And I couldn't help but notice the vast open spaces that surround us in our towns and cities that get abundant sunlight the whole day. And I started thinking about what if we could develop a device, develop a solution which could harness these vast open areas which are lying unused. And therefore, in 2017, I quit my architectural practice and devoted myself full time to this problem, along with my co founder, Francois, who's a product designer, who's also passionate about sustainable products. And so we started working on this challenge and thought that the challenge should address not small homes, it should address something which is powerful, something which can be multiplied, something which can generate serious amounts of power. And that's how we've come forward with this solution.
I mean, it sounds to me also like a lot of the times when we have these ideas, we always assume that someone else is going to do it. Like someone else is going to solve that problem. Someone else is going to handle it. But at the end of the day, if no one else is doing it, you kind of got to step up and be like, this is something that I'm going to handle, that I'm passionate enough to actually follow through with.
Yes, absolutely. Global warming is something that each one of us has to fight, and each one of us has to contribute towards you can't reverse it, but you can slow it down. And unless each one of us realizes that we have a real problem, the problem isn't going to just go away. And 40 years hence, you're going to have a planet that's completely unlivable.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, such a huge problem. And I think the other thing is, you have this incredible background being an architect, really working with this actual materials and understanding the industry, right? When you really make that commitment to go out on your own, what kind of happened next? Like, how did you get the business help? How did you get the help when it comes to assembling this team? Did you look for mentors? How did you fill in those gaps when it comes to that, your skill set there?
Well, it happened sort of naturally. And Francois and I worked pretty in intensively for about 2 to 3 years. And then a very, very dear friend of mine from when I was 6 years old is based in Connecticut, and he's a money manager. He's an investment manager, and so I discussed it with him, and then we got him onto the team. He became an advisor, and then we got Jay Kaysen, who's our legal advisor. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's got had tremendous experience with startups, and he's one of the finest patent lawyers in the US. And so we got this team together. We got hold of a couple of very good advisors, and that's how we started going. And we've had a great run, really.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. Obviously, you've been able to do a six-figure campaign here, getting a bunch of funding on WeFunder, and have had a lot of success in terms of connecting with an audience. A lot of people who have said very nice things also about the campaign.
That's right. That's right. Actually, the WeFunder campaign was initiated with a dual strategy. Of course, the primary focus was to raise funds because, unlike a lot of startups, unlike a lot of technology startups, which require a small amount of seed investment to build their MVP, our device is very large and therefore product development expensive. And therefore, to
Mhm.
start off with, we needed a high level of investment. And we found it a little challenging going with a concept and a virtual prototype to angel investors, who many of whom have certain mindsets. Oh, you don't have a prototype, how are you going to make it work? So finally, after 2 years of trying to get funds together, we decided to go on to WeFunder to raise funds. And secondly, most importantly, to generate
Mm.
awareness amongst people. And the platform is fantastic because it gives you this amazing outreach to simple folks like you and me, you know, and you explain it in simple words and simple diagrams to these folks, and they buy into your idea without mindsets. And that was amazingly refreshing.
Yeah, and I'm looking here also what some people are saying. So, like, they're investing because they like how it will change the future. Other people say clean energy will help preserve the planet. Other people say love the plan for functioning yet appealing solar power harvesting. So you're kind of tapping into a lot of different reasons why people got behind you as well.
That's right. There are several reasons why people have invested in us, and we've got some really great investors. And the WeFunder campaign has kind of given us a certain wind beneath our wings, and we took our product development forward. We've started prototype development, and although we have to raise a fair amount of funds to achieve go to market, the WeFunder campaign really has set us off very well.
So, in terms of your stage, when you really brought this to the crowd, was this in the idea stage? Did you already have a bit of a prototype? What kind of stage were you in there?
We had built a virtual prototype which validated the structural concerns and the power generation concerns of the device. So it was structurally stable, it could withstand hurricane winds, it could generate the amount of power that we were estimating. And networks of this device could be put together to generate significant amounts of power for neighborhoods or communities. And
Mm.
what we'd also done is we'd developed the design to a level of finality in terms of its aesthetics, in terms of its materials, in terms of its appearance, and in terms of how it can solve problems that we are faced with today.
Got it. So you had this virtual prototype you thought out very carefully, got it working in terms of how it would work in the real world, brought it to the crowd. How long were you working on this campaign before you really launched it, would you say?
We started working on the campaign about 3 months before we launched it, which in
Okay, awesome.
hindsight, yeah, which in hindsight was a little rushed. We didn't know much about crowdfunding. We just sort of jumped into it, and we learned a lot of lessons along the way. And but yeah, it was about 3 months before we sort of formally launched the campaign.
What did it feel like right before you were going to hit that launch button and everything you've been doing from 2017 onwards, quitting your job, really networking hard, getting all these people involved, and everyone's now kind of behind this mission to improve, the harmful effects of climate change. What did it feel like before you hit that launch button and you're about to unveil this to the entire world?
Well, it was a mixture between excitement and anticipation. Yes, we were very excited about going to the crowd. We'd read about a lot of other folks who'd had tremendous success. We'd also read about certain folks who had tremendous failures. But it was exciting and it was very anticipating. Yeah.
And as you really turned that engine on, I imagine you started to do some outreach and such, and you started to see people making commitments. What did that feel like for you as the entrepreneur, the founder behind this project?
Very satisfying, encouraging, and a kind of a validation about what we were doing. Up to that stage when we hit the button going to the crowd, we were working to a large extent in isolation for some specific reasons, a lot to do with intellectual property and protecting ideas and but since we'd filed our patent applications and filed our design patent applications, we decided to go to the crowd, and that was the first
Yeah.
time we really made this idea public.
And to be honest, like looking through this, you've gotten a lot of really high quality questions of people who are interested in your project here. Obviously, asking a bit about the technology, asking about the implementation, also your business strategy, et cetera. So you really had a lot of people who were, looking at this, looking through it, studying what you were doing, and taking away that they want to hop on that bandwagon.
Yes, and that was very encouraging. That was very encouraging, and responding to the questions was great. And realizing that people are delving deeper and trying to understand what we're doing and questioning certain aspects of what we're doing. It's been a learning. It's been a great learning.
So for those that aren't out there, in order to have this kind of success, people have to really see something that's different and novel with your technology. Do you think that you can kind of share with the listeners how is it that you are attacking this problem in a completely different way or in a way that's going to, solve this in a way that a lot of other companies haven't?
Yes, the device is transformational in many ways. Firstly, it breaks away from the notion that solar panels have to be fixed on top of rooftops, or that solar panels need to have very heavy, flimsy, cumbersome supporting structures because they are so heavy. So the solar petal that we've designed and fabricated is going to be about 70% lighter than a conventional solar panel. And because of its lightness, the sun tracking system can be simpler and more efficient. The other defining feature is that it tracks the sun from morning to evening, which a solar panel fixed on a roof does not do. And
Mm,
because a rooftop panel cannot follow the sun from morning to evening, it is 30 to 40% less efficient than our device. You know. So in terms of performance, in terms of applicability, it can be mounted anywhere the sun shines. It doesn't need any supporting structure. You have huge
mm.
parking lots in front of Walmart or in front of Costco that are absolutely barren, get abundant sunshine, but don't provide any shade to customers.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Palmy device can harness those areas, allow activities to happen below them, and generate power, provide shade, and live within our communities amongst us because of its aesthetics.
I love the aesthetic look of it, and it almost reminds me of these like large flowers, kind of. Like it looks like it's literally just part of the foliage, right? Part of the surroundings, kind of.
Yes, it's inspired by the palm tree, but and a lot of people have said that, because of the curve, is the efficiency of the cells affected? Is it becoming less efficient because all the solar cells don't face the sun? And our response to that is the curve has been very carefully arranged in a way that 80% of the solar cells on those petals actually are facing the sun all the time. So it's a kind of
Mm.
an illusion that we've created that it's a curve, but if you look at it more closely, it's largely flat.
When it comes to the marketing of the campaign here, so you go live, did you have any kind of a strategy when it comes to getting the word out there to attract these investors to this project? Was there anything that you were doing on the execution side?
Yes, we were bootstrapping, frankly speaking, because we were advised before we launched the campaign that you need to do a certain amount of marketing and that marketing is critical to the success of the campaign. But the problem we faced at that stage was we had no money at all. We
Mm.
went into the campaign with some $500 in our bank balance, you know. So we were really bootstrapping and we were marketing on our own. We studied how to market on Facebook, how to market on various platforms, how to send out email campaigns. And so we learned a lot along the way. And perhaps it wasn't ideal, but we frankly couldn't afford a marketing agency, and
Yeah,
therefore,
understood.
we had to adopt strategies which we could implement on our own based on our own understanding.
What would you say is the most effective or the most powerful strategy that worked well when it comes to driving interest for the project?
Well, it was the marketing, it was the Facebook ads that did have a sort of a
Positive effect.
defining effect on the campaign. It was our email marketing, it was our outreach to friends and family, it was our outreach to investors. So it was a sort of a multi-pronged strategy that we tried to implement.
Did you do anything in the way of taking phone calls or webinars or anything like that to answer questions at all?
No, we did not. But we did. I was interviewed by Alan Jones of Talk Funding, which was during the campaign, and he questioned me on several aspects of the WeFunder campaign, and I think that contributed to a level of interest.
Very
But
cool, very cool.
social media was probably the primary engine that we utilized.
Understood, understood. So now you obviously have had a successful campaign and you're able to move forward when it comes to this project. If you could go back in time to when you were just kind of getting started here, you quit your job, would you have given any advice to that version of yourself, or are there any lessons that you would pass on either with leadership or with building a startup or anything along those lines?
I think the key lesson that I've learned is persistence. Along the road, very often you get a little disillusioned, or you might get disillusioned because starting a startup is always challenging. Raising initial funds is always challenging. A lot of people have told me that once you raise your first million, then the rest comes in not so difficult. But the first million is the toughest. And if you sort of are positive in your outlook, if you're persistent, and you turn every stone in front of you, then that's the only way really to go forward, as far as I'm concerned.
So being persistent, moving forward despite any obstacle, and really trying to look for those opportunities, it sounds like, is what was important to you.
And believing in what you're trying to do, yes, that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think as well that just coalesces everyone around you when it comes to your team, when it comes to the investor base, and just kind of that vision for the future. I mean, obviously that's the role, right, of the CEO. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So when it comes to your project here, what are you expecting to happen next? Where really are you going with this company, and what do you see happening next when it comes to the products?
Well, we've started prototype development with award-winning product engineering firm Lucid Design Agency, which is based in Barcelona. We've been interacting with them for the past 2 years off and on in trying to figure out how to go forward with this project, because it's fairly challenging. It's a large device. It has to withstand a significant amount of environmental discomfort because it's outdoors. It has to last for 25 years. That's the lifespan. So we have started developing the prototype, and we hope to test the Delta prototype, which is the full scale prototype, within 6 to 8 months, and following which we will move on to going to market. What we've also done in the last year is that we have formulated strategic partnerships with key companies in the same space. And the idea of forming strategic partnerships is that we don't address customers, we address one customer who has already got a base of hundreds of customers, you know.
Mm.
So that's what we've been busy with. Also, in addition to raising funds, we've also been setting up strategic partnerships with, and we have them in place now with three great companies who are very excited about our product, and who will lend a huge supporting hand once we're ready to go to market.
Yeah, I think that will be obviously huge, right? And you really are in an industry where the wind is at your back because so many people are trying to transition to green. I think that's you can see that, right? Even these larger oil companies, these larger other kinds of companies are really trying to bring green into their business plan.
Yes, that's
You don't
correct.
have to. Yeah. Do you ever see yourself getting acquired by maybe one of these big guys at some point in time, or is that not really something you want to get into?
We are open to all options at the moment, but we still have a way to go. And at the moment, we are concentrating on getting to market, building up the company to a certain level. We already know that we have a customer base waiting for us. You know, when we started off 2 years ago, started raising funds 2 years ago, people used to ask us who will buy this product. You know, it's just too big, it's too expensive, it's not going to be economical, etc., etc. And today we have people asking us, when can we have it? You know, when are you going to be coming out? And we've got queries from places like Serbia, places like Cornwall in the UK, you know, hey, when can we buy your product? So it's been a transformation in terms of how people relate to us too, how people relate to the product, that, you know, to the device.
How are those people? How are those people stumbling across your product in Serbia and these other countries? Like, where are they discovering this from? You think?
I think the Facebook campaign did that.
So basically, being willing to put yourself out there on Facebook, it sounds like, has allowed you to connect with just a larger group of people.
Yes, it was, I think, a combined sort of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Yes, I think it did reach out to a lot of people who have expressed a high level of interest.
And do you feel like that surprised you, or do you feel like that's just kind of inevitable, right? Where more and more countries around the world are going to be looking to adopt new technology like this.
I think it's inevitable, but I think that while it's inevitable, you have to have a solution that is relevant, that excites people, and that in itself has a high level of relevance in terms of the future. So you have certain forces which are pushing people to adopt clean technologies, but you also have certain forces which will adopt more favorable technologies more effectively, if you know what I mean. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, if you have something great that you're trying to sell, then you have more people interested in it. Whereas if you just have a much more efficient solar panel, then yeah, people will buy it, but they won't be excited by it. You know, so that's another problem, that the whole emphasis of going green has till now been largely quantitative.
Yeah, let me ask you a question when it comes to all these new technological innovations that you see and that you've been obviously researching. There are so many people out there who have great ideas, who can even maybe come up with a concept, but they really can't take it to that next stage in the way that you have, right? To be able to capture the public's imagination, to be able to get people in Serbia, right, talking about your product, to be able to turn that into from $500 in your bank to now over 100K, right? What do you think really has different about you and what you've been able to do that has allowed you to kind of stand head and shoulders above some of those people who maybe have ideas but aren't getting that into the real world?
I think being someone from a profession that is creative helped me. I was able to visualize what this device was going to be. I was able to visualize what the final solution was going to look like in the larger context, even before it was built. You know, because that's my job as an architect, to be able to dream of buildings and to be able to see them in my mind's eye before the foundations are even dug, you know. So because of that training, I was able to visualize how the Palmy device and networks of the device would embrace our towns and cities even before the device was built. And we
Mm.
created these visualizations based on my understanding to convey to the layperson what these would look like and what these would feel like. Because human beings are aesthetic creatures,
People. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
essence. Yeah. The necessity of aesthetics in what we do every day is so important that sometimes we don't even realize it.
So that ability to visualize, first of all, but also to put those ideas you have on paper and to be able to share them with other people, that sounds like that was kind of almost like the trick that, or the, big takeaway that enabled other people to really see that vision for themselves, to communicate that vision, right?
Yes, I think that's important. It's important to dream big, but then it's important to come down to the nitty gritty. So from professionally, what we call it is a whole to part approach. You sort of visualize the vision as a dream, a huge dream, and then you work backwards down to the nuts and bolts, and then work upwards again to achieve the vision.
Yeah, and the more obviously you do that, the more it becomes something that's solid, something that you can talk with other people about, something that people take you even more seriously about when it comes to your project.
That's right.
Love it. That's awesome, man. So I just have one or two more questions for you. First of all, where can people go to learn more about what you're doing when it comes to green technology, your company, and some of the new announcements you're going to be having coming out?
Well, we have our website palm.energy, which is very informative. But our WeFunder page has much more nitty gritty in it. Much more sort of granular information. So even though the campaign is closed at the moment, the page is up and it's viewable, and people can have a look at what we are doing.
Okay, and you can also, for those that are listening, watch for updates as well. For any updates on that
Absolutely,
page, you can just hit that button.
absolutely.
When it comes to this process, you were talking about learning about Reg CF and equity crowdfunding. Were there any pieces of this process that you felt like should be better explained to beginners, or any pieces that you feel like was kind of murky?
No, Reg CF is fairly straightforward. That wasn't the challenge. What we experienced on the campaign was that some companies which are doing well are featured on the homepage of the platform. What happens typically, again, it becomes a quantitative kind of exercise, which I've noticed on all these crowdfunding platforms. You know, the main focus is on folks who are doing well, folks who have done the best next last week. But what is needed really, possibly, is that if there's some sort of a categorization where companies are categorized according to their industry segment, and there
Mm,
is a certain exposure for each industry segment on the platform on different days, so that everybody gets exposure rather than just the guys who are breaking records. So that's a kind of a learning that can be sort of translated to the platforms to
yeah.
tweak their systems, tweak their AI codes a little bit to make them less quantitative and a little more qualitative.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Or even having curated kind of ones that they feel like are really moving the world forward, right? Or working on very important causes in that way. Yeah, that's really cool. The final question I had for you was, you talked about working to get angel investment and this kind of new method turning out a lot better for you. Do you wish you had just gone straight to crowdfunding, or are you glad that you kind of got to do the angel investment, trying that out first?
No, our outreach has always been multiple and will continue to be multiple. And while we have raised on WeFunder, we continue our outreach to angels and other interested people. We continue our outreach to strategic partners, because we feel that in order to be successful, you need to have not only the funds to develop the product, but you need to have a network to make that product do what it's supposed to do in the final
Mm,
analysis.
very cool. So, from at least today's discussion, some of the things I took away is just the importance of persistence, the importance of pushing past obstacles, the need to visualize and to bring those visualizations into the real world so you can communicate those with other people. How you've been able to go from literally a company that didn't exist to then having people around the world, people in Serbia asking you to bring their technology to them, going from $500 in your bank account to over a six-figure WeFunder campaign. And not only that, attracting just world-class talent, right, to your leadership team. My final question for you is, do you have a final tip, a word of encouragement, something that you wish you knew, or anything that you'd like to pass on to the audience? And we can end on that note.
Yes, the one tip that I have is dream big, but work very hard to achieve those dreams, because that's what it takes to achieve dreams.
Well said. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And good luck with your next couple of months here in building out your prototype and getting this into many people's hands.
Thank you very much, Salvador. Great speaking with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for listening to this episode. And also that I hope that by the end of this episode, you are emboldened to take action. We love to talk about inspirational stories on this podcast. Go and listen to some of the archives. Leave me a rating review if you enjoyed this show. But we also like to talk about tactics. And hopefully you also took away some things that worked when it comes to this individual's story of success. So I got a question for you. When you are going out there and you're really trying to accomplish your goals, I really think it's important to always kind of stay attuned to really the kind of future that you want to build. So my question for you is that if things go exactly the way that you want, let's just say in the next 4 to 5 months, what would you see? What would you be doing? What would that future really look like? And then I want to kind of follow that up with, okay, so if you have this future, you have this thing you're working towards, and you think about the next 5 months, what would you really see? What would you be doing? My follow-up question is, what are you currently avoiding that if you actually push through could help you get to that future version that you're craving, that you're working towards, that you secretly want? What are you really avoiding? And the reason why I asked that is that I don't know why, but for a lot of the recent coaching calls I've been doing, when we were talking with students, they're so intelligent, so smart, they're willing to work hard, which I think is incredible. The community that we have of this podcast of listeners, people who are willing to work hard, who are taking action, who are investing in their education, investing in their success. I think that's incredible that we're able to have listeners like that. And I feel very privileged to be able to teach and talk to those type of individuals. But that being said, what I've kind of been noticing is that something that has been kind of holding them back hasn't necessarily been their willingness to work hard. And I kind of encountered this when I was talking with an individual, and he was like, Sal, I was putting off getting some 3D renderings for my product for years. And eventually I did it. And I got some 3D renderings, and it took a day. It took 2 days to actually get these 3D renderings. And I had that realization that, wow, I wasted years of my life pushing this off, putting it off, because I was afraid. What if I wasted my money? What if I had to give feedback and it didn't come out the way that I wanted? And that just level of frustration and anxiety I would feel throughout that process. And eventually I did it, and it was so much simpler than I ever thought possible, right? And I really resonated with this because I think this is so true in my own life and also in the lives of my students, is that we put things off. We avoid doing things. Sometimes we procrastinate by doing other work, right? Other work that we shouldn't be doing, but we kind of procrastinate with what we should be focused on by doing that other work. So my question for you is that I know that you have this crystal clear goal, that you're working hard. What are you actually avoiding right now? Take a second to just consider that today. And one more question there, which is, what if you really got everything together, got your ducks in a row, and you pushed through that, and you actually just did it? If you're going up in the plane, when it comes to going on a trip, and you're going skydiving, let's just say, you're going up in that plane, it's rising, and all of a sudden, they open the hatch to the plane, and you look down and you see the ground many feet below, and you feel the wind blowing. And it's at that moment, the only thing that you can do is I got to jump. Because otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to go all the way down, and you're going to regret that experience that you didn't go skydiving. You just got to jump at a certain point in time. You got to push through that fear. You know what I'm saying, man? You got to push through what you're avoiding. And it's almost like this just commitment that, I feel a little bit uncertain. I feel a little bit hesitant. I feel a little bit scared. I feel these things, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And that, my friend, is how champions are made. So if you relate with what I'm talking about and you feel like that something is kind of holding you back, but in addition, you also want to learn more about the process of crowdfunding. Maybe you want to talk about a Kickstarter, an Indiegogo. Maybe you want to talk about regulation crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, or even just what you got to do next in this process and want more clarity, as well as resources and tools that you can get access to. You maybe want to talk about working on this project together, etc. I obviously have a pretty big schedule that's very filled, but I do try to carve out time. And I think that's one of the best ways, honestly, to do that is with my one-on-one coaching calls. So if you want to talk about this and you want to book a one-on-one coaching call with me, these are intensive coaching sessions that I really put a lot of thought and energy into having a positive outcome where you feel like you're confident coming out of that call, where you know exactly what you got to do, have way more clarity, and really kind of like the podcast, demystify this for you. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to connect, pay attention to the link I'm about to mention, because this is how you can book a one-on-one call and claim your spot. You can go to crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. Just go to that link. You can book a one-on-one coaching call with me, and we can talk about your project and we get this all squared away ASAP. So I hope that this episode really resonated with you to a degree, that you realize that you don't have to be a mastermind, a brainiac in order to raise money with crowdfunding. It's really something that's quite simple when you get down to it, but it's really just knowing what you got to do. But the other thing is, this process, this journey is about more than just getting results. Getting results is important. That's what I'm focused on, right? That's literally what everything that I put out is designed to do, is help you get results. But I really invite you to view this process as being something deeper and being something more than just getting results. And that's, how do you grow in the process? What story can you tell about yourself? What regrets do you going to erase when you can finally take action? You can finally plow through those negative emotions and get to the promised land, get to where you want to go, get to that ideal future that you want to have in those 5 months or so. Hope you enjoyed this episode. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.